the reason, of course, that we're here tonight is to listen to a true patriot. He's an author. He speaks all over the world. He's a constitutionalist, and he's a supporter of the people. He challenged the status quo. He went against the government in the Brady Bill bunch, and he won. He's a man who truly believes that the government should exist to protect the freedoms of the individuals from which it serves and not vice versa. Please welcome retired Douglas County, Arizona Sheriff Richard Mack.
Well, just one mistake right there. It's Graham County, Arizona. I know it, but Douglas County keeps coming up all the time because that's where I'm speaking tomorrow in Oregon. So they've done so much advertising, they think I'm the sheriff there now. You know, it's I'll tell you what, it's wonderful to be here. It feels like I'm in Arizona still. I don't know what you Northern Californians are doing with this hot weather, but you know what? If the Founding Fathers can devise a Declaration of Independence in the heat and humidity of Philadelphia, we can sure devise freedom right here in Redding, California, in a little bit of heat. You know, we're just going to keep drinking and whatever we have to do to make this happen. I really want you to know I appreciate being here. I really love America, and I'm so happy to be able to travel the country and see people like you all across the country. I've already been to Texas 2 or 3 times, and Michigan, and Ohio, and New Mexico, and Idaho, and everybody feels the same way. Overwhelmed at the huge disconnect between the people and the power grab in Washington, D.C. And back when I was sheriff in Arizona, the federal government tried to force the sheriffs in this country to work for them for free and participate in a federal gun control scheme, as you were talking about, known as the Brady Bill. And I was the first sheriff in the United States to file a lawsuit against this to stop it and to say, you know what, the federal government has gone too far. We're not going to accept this anymore. And now they have gone too far to the 10th power. And I'm here to tell you there is an answer. And the solution lies right here with some of the people that they just introduced. A local mayor or assistant mayor, county commissioner, and people here in your backyard are the answer. Do not pretend or waste any more time and money on Washington, D.C. politics. There is no answer there. In fact, it's the most corrupt place on the planet. Forget it. Okay? Now, one follow-up with that is, I'm an investigator, and I've investigated this thoroughly. And if God doesn't strike Washington, D.C. down, then he owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology. You know? Now, my investigation just came up with that. And so, you know, that's just the way it is. Now, real briefly, I just want you to know, afterwards, I've got to get to Roseburg, Oregon. Okay? But I will sign books for you afterwards until they're gone. Okay? So make sure you get these. And most of what I'm going to be talking about is the book, this one. The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. And I not only came up with this at the lowest point that anyone would think there is any hope. And when was that? It was during the last year's election. It seemed totally hopeless and totally worthless to all of us, didn't it? And you know, at first, and I'm a true constitutional patriot, but the truth of the matter is, at first I really liked Barack Obama, or Barry Soetoro, whatever his name is. And why would I like him at first? Because it's easy. He was beating Hillary Clinton, you know? And then I thought, well, heck, you know, he'll put a nail in her political coffin, and then we'll get rid of Barack, because there's nobody going to vote for somebody with a name like that in America after what happened in 9/11. And yet, now we got both of them. So, I guess I shouldn't have been hoping like I was. And my dear friends, hope does spring eternal with me. And the title of this book hit me right during the election. And there is hope. And there is a way to get back our constitutional freedoms. And if your sheriffs and your local authorities will stand together against the incursions of the federal government, we can keep this a peaceful process. The fate of our country is in the hands of your county sheriff and local officials. It is not in the corrupt hands of Washington, D.C. politicians. We control our destiny here. We can take a stand. And I'm going to prove to you tonight in what I have to say, and this book is irrefutable proof of what I'm saying. You need to read it, and you need to get it to everybody else that you can. And I've also have a CD, DVD. This is a DVD, and I'm in my real pretty pink shirt and matching tie. And a company out of LA, Los Angeles, came and did this interview with me, and they just sent me the tapes yesterday. And so I'd like you to get a hold of these too. And they're on my table right outside as you're leaving, or you can go and get them when we're on break or whenever you want them. But as many of them that are there, please purchase them. And then my first book is out there also, From My Cold Dead Fingers. And that book was born out of the lawsuit against the Clinton administration on the Brady bill. And many of you will remember in 1994 is when I filed that lawsuit. And there was a lot of people that sued Bill Clinton. But you know what? I was the only one in history to sue Bill Clinton on a non-sexual matter. You know? Thank you very much. Well, he deserved that. But ladies and gentlemen, all this is, and I should call you my dear friends and my fellow Americans, because this is all about the brotherhood of freedom, and that we're all a part of, and that we're all so concerned about. And it all just boils down to really what we believe, and what America was founded upon in the first place. And so any time that you're asked, what is government for? Where do we turn to find that? What is government for? Why do we have government? Is there anything in our foundational documents that answers that question for us? Well, there is. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. You hear politicians spew that every time they're running for office or when they're giving some 4th of July speech, don't you? That among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Do you know the next line? That's where it tells us what government's for. If you're dog catcher, if you're kindergarten teacher, if you're sheriff, if you're county commissioner, if you're mayor, if you're local police department, your state rep, your state senator, your U.S. senator, if they're not doing this one thing, then they're doing the wrong job. They're in the wrong place. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. To secure what? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What can we call the pursuit of happiness? Property. Families. Families owning their own property. The pursuit of happiness is never guaranteed, is it? And that's what the Marxist platform wants to bring to our country now. The same thing that we fought and died for in numerous wars, we're now giving away within. And there's probably something we need to make sure we know and understand there, and that's also in the book. The book starts off with that very principle. The very first page. The founders of America warned us that we would lose more freedoms from gradual encroachments by those in authority than by sudden usurpations from any foreign power. On page 19 of the book, it gets a lot more specific than that. This is a quote from James Madison, the father of our Constitution. And he warned us specifically, this is exactly what he said. There are more instances of the abridgment of freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachments from those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations. In other words, who's the greatest threat to a God-given constitutional American liberty? It is our own federal government. Let's make no mistake here. And then Thomas Jefferson warned us that when all power shall be drawn to Washington, it will render powerless the checks provided and become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated. He's talking about King George III. And now we have a government that pretends there are no limitations, that they can do anything they want, anytime they want, completely ignore the Constitution, and the very people who have promised us that they would uphold and defend the Constitution and protect our rights are the very ones destroying it. And when that happens, is there a place we can turn for help? Are there public officials that we can depend on? Are there people locally who have promised us that they would protect us, even from venal and oppressive government? When government becomes that venal and oppressive, can we count on the very people locally who swore in God's name that they would serve us and protect, defend, and preserve our constitutional rights? I'm telling you that the evidence is irrefutable, and it's right here, and we're going to review this a little bit. But this is the thing. The encroachments are no longer silent, nor are they gradual. But they're right in our face, and they're bold, and they're as hot as it is tonight. They are there right in front of us, and that's why we're here tonight. And let me remind all of you, and those of you who might be here just checking this meeting out for other government officials, you're welcome to be here, because you know why? This is a peaceful process. This is a patriotic process. And I guarantee each one of you that this peaceful process will remain such if your sheriffs get behind it. If your local officials do not get in the position and take the position of protecting you from the incursions and encroachments of the federal government, then we will watch America die. She's really, really sick right now, and she's hanging on by a thread. But we can revive her. Where? Right here in this county. And we'll take our country back county by county, because you only need a handful of officials here locally to do it with you. In Washington, D.C., you need like 500 and all these lobbyists and corporate money and corruption and cesspool that it is. Like I said, it's not the answer. And it hasn't been for a long time. And we need to come to grips with that. And we all need to focus on this one thing, on this one solution. I didn't come here to just tell you how bad the problem is. You already know that. I came here with a solution. A lawful, constitutional solution endorsed by the United States Supreme Court and the case that I filed there. This is true. And we can pick this up and run with it. We don't have to watch the futures of our children die in front of us, or our grandchildren. We can make this happen. And that's why I'm so glad that so many of you are here tonight, because you can make this happen. And there's children here, and maybe it's going to be up to some of them too. And we can take America back. And that's really what the theme is here. And we're not talking about violence at all. We invite all to come to this movement in a peaceful manner. And we mean no harm to any other person on the face of the planet. Even federal agents. We mean them no harm. But make no mistake, we will keep our freedom, we will keep our families, and we hope that you will keep your oath of office. That's where all this boils down to. Now, thank you. And there's one other thing I want all of you to know and understand. Why do we take an oath of office? Why do officials take an oath of office? Why does the president take an oath of office? Well, it's actually constitutionally required. It is the supreme law of the land. We are required to take this oath, and it says, let me quote this right from the Constitution itself. Article 6. The senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. So if any of your officials have not taken it, they have violated the Constitution. If they don't keep their oath, they have violated your trust. And we're going to start doing something about that. And I'm here to tell you tonight that the message and movement that this book started, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, has actually turned into a movement that I never anticipated. This book came out February 15th. Now some nationally known people, who I'm not ready to name yet, flew me out to Atlanta last week, and they said, you know what, we saw you on the internet, we saw your interview on YouTube, and they saw this interview that you can take home with you tonight. And they said, you're right. And we're switching our gears. These are people that have worked in high up places in the RNC. And people who have done a huge amount of work for America, who now want to concentrate on the power of the sheriff and getting, in 2010, 900 sheriffs elected who are constitutional sheriffs. And that's what we're going to do. Yeah. Now, where do we go with all this? Well, let me tell you something that happened to me. I've got a very personal story that started me on this constitutional path. And, you know, it only took the good Lord hit me over the head with a 2x4 about 10 times, and finally the 10th time I got it. Okay, I was a police officer, kind of a rookie police officer, and I'd been on the police department about 3 years, and this was in Provo, Utah. And I'm sitting there tallying my numbers of the tickets I'd been writing that day. And I wrote a lot of tickets. And I'm not proud of that either, I'll be quite honest with you. I never, in my entire career, did I allow anyone in my department to write anybody a ticket for not having a seatbelt on. And nor have I ever enforced that law. I will never be counted on the wrong side of that issue. You see, enforcement is the key. And police departments and sheriff's offices are not intended to follow you around and make sure you wear your seatbelt, and then if you don't, take $50 from you or your property, or impound your car, or whatever else they do. And roadblocks, administrative checkpoints, to check to see if your papers are in order. That's not our job. What is the job of your police? To secure these rights. What is their job? So the next time I ask you, I want to hear all of you say that. To secure these rights. That's all. Not to treat us as subjects, not to balance your budget because you write more tickets and you lower the threshold and write more tickets so you can balance your budget because the state didn't know what they were doing here in California or in just about any place else. But you know, Gosh, yeah, look what you see when you don't have your shotgun. Yeah. You know, I hear geese are really great, especially with salt and pepper. You know? But to secure these rights is exactly why they're there. And so I didn't get this at first. And I'm parked in my marked unit. There's an old blue car with the bubblegum machine lights on the top, the red and blue lights. And this is about 1983, and it's in the fall, and it's a beautiful day. I mean, a gorgeous day. A little bit cooler than it is here right now. And this lady runs a stop sign right in front of me, and my car is right there. It's the only thing there. I'm only 50 feet from the intersection, and it's a four-way stop. And she runs it, and I'm going, what on earth is she doing right there in front of me? And I looked inside her car, and it was a compact Datsun station wagon, and really cruddy looking, old looking. It wasn't worth $400. But ladies, I don't know if you can relate to this, but it looked like 4 or 5 kids in there had turned into the Tasmanian devil. And they were just, there was arms flying and feet flying and kids flying all over the place, and the mom, of course, was trying to settle them down and didn't know. She kind of lost her spot on her path and ended up in the middle of the intersection when she finally saw that she had gone too far, and in trying to settle the kids down, she ran the stop sign. And I was able to surmise that, and she immediately pulls over because she saw me, and she just throws her, when she sees me, she just throws her arms up there like, what else could go wrong today? And so I get up to the car, and she already has her license and registration out the window, just like that. And so I thought, oh, good. She's not even crying or putting up an argument. It says, officer, well, look at all these people. Look at all these kids I got. My husband gave me all these kids, and I can't handle them. And please don't give me a ticket. Your wife probably has lots of kids, and your mother didn't. Why are you doing this to me? Think of your mother. She didn't say a word. It was obvious she was having a horrible day, and I was making it worse. And she just stared right through her windshield. She didn't want to be there. She was seriously wondering why she got up that day, and she was certainly wondering why she married that guy that gave her all these kids. And so I just started writing the ticket because I knew this was going to be easy, and I got another slash mark for my daily activity report, and I was going to get a pat on the back for all these wonderful tickets I wrote. And right when I'm getting to the end of signing at the end of the ticket, you sign your name and put your serial number. And I'm just finishing putting my serial number, and I paused. And I looked down at this cruddy old car, and I looked down at this depressed lady who was still just staring straight ahead. And I looked over at her snotty-nosed kids, and it was obvious that this family did not have the money to pay for this ticket I'm going to give her. And then I looked at me, and it was the most penetrating gaze that I've ever experienced in my life. And I asked myself a few questions. I said, Mack, is there anything that you're doing here that's helping this family and her children? Is there anything that you're doing that's bringing honor to the badge on your chest? And is there anything you're doing here that's making this town a better place to live in? Well, I knew the answer to all of that, and now I'm more depressed than that lady in the car. And I took that ticket back to the car, and I handed her back her license and registration, and I didn't say a word to her. And I'm wondering how long she sat there wondering if I was coming back, or just what I was doing. But what would a good police officer do there, who was really interested in helping, who might have been compassionate, and wanted to teach this lady that police are here to help and serve? I think in retrospect now, I really wish that I had said, ma'am, I know you didn't mean to run the stop sign, and I know your kids were really giving you some problems, and they still are. There's an elementary school right across the street. Why don't you take your kids over there for 15 minutes, let them get some of that energy out, let them finish that Tasmanian devil thing, and then when you compose yourself and you're ready to go down the road after a few minutes, head on down and be ready to drive safely. Okay? And thanks and have a better day. Don't you think that would have probably helped her and her family a lot more than what I was going to do? Yeah. So, I violated policy, and I went back to the police station and tore that ticket up into 100 pieces and threw it in the trash can. And the rest of the night I wondered why I was a police officer. And the next day, swing shift is the shift I was working at the time, and it starts at 3 o'clock, but briefing's at 2:30. And my dear friends, I do not know what was leading me to this. I honestly don't, except for the man upstairs that hit me over the head with the 2x4. And I went to the city clerk's office and I said, did I ever sign an oath of office? I don't know why I was saying this. And she says, yeah. And she gave me a copy of it right then and there. She took it out of my personnel file. And I had signed it. And it said, I, Richard Mack, solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully uphold, defend, and obey the United States Constitution and the Constitution of Utah. And now, I'm going to go quit my job. Because I had never read the Constitution of the state of Utah, and I had never read the Constitution of the United States, and yet I promised in God's name that I would uphold, defend, obey, and preserve and protect this sacred document. And now, right before, and I'm serious, I'm leaving. I'm not going to go to briefing. I'm quitting. And then I said, wake up, Mac. You don't have to quit your job. You just have to quit being a liar and a hypocrite. And so right as soon as briefing was over, I went home and grabbed the World Book Encyclopedia that my grandma sold for many, many years, and got the U.S. Constitution and read the Constitution the rest of the night when I wasn't on another call. I know something I didn't do that night. I didn't write any more tickets. Yeah. But I did talk to people, and I still stop people. And then I started studying the lives of our founding fathers. And I started studying the basic tenets of the Revolutionary War. And then while I'm in the middle of this study and learning about the founding fathers, an announcement came on the briefing board of a police training at the University of Utah entitled Constitutional Studies for Law Enforcement Officers. And I'm going, what? And then I saw the man's name who was the instructor, and it was W. Cleon Skousen. And I went and told the chief, I said, I got to go to that training. I know this man. He used to work in the FBI with my father, and I want to go to that training. He says, nobody's going from this department to that training. I said, it's sponsored by POST, Peace Officer Standard Training. It's by the state. The state's sponsoring this. And he goes, he's not mainstream. We're not going. So I took off 2 days vacation and went to the training anyway. Ha ha! And during this 2-day seminar, I was converted to the United States Constitution. And an overwhelming feeling came over me, and I made myself a promise. No one else heard this except the man with the 2x4 that kept hitting me with it. And I said, I will never be on the wrong side again. Is there a movie where you heard that same line? Braveheart. Robert the Bruce told that to his father after he betrayed William Wallace. And when I saw that film, it was the exact same words, word for word. I will never be on the wrong side again. And I honestly believe that if we put the right information in front of the right people, the sheriffs and police officers of this country and in your county, you got to make sure that they read this and see this proof. It's only 49 pages. Nobody has an excuse not to read this. Who needs to read it first? You do. Okay? And then you share it and you spread it. And then you make sure that they have no excuse after they read it, and you get back with them. And you ask them to write down the answer on page 16. There's a little homework assignment. We're going to go over that in just a second. Well, after that, now I'm a constitutional nut, and a right-wing nut because I believe in the Declaration of Independence and the Founding Fathers and the Second Amendment. And I tell you, the Second Amendment was so important to us and freedom, and the Founding Fathers put it as the Second Amendment to make sure that it would protect the First and everything else. And it wasn't so we could hunt geese that fly over during our meetings. And it wasn't, I never was a member of the NRA before this. I was not a hunter. I've never been hunting in my life. I wouldn't know what to do with that goose if I shot it. I've never been hunting. But my passion for freedom and the right to keep and bear arms is only about liberty. And what the original militia of this country did with the right to keep and bear arms. And ultimately in America, the people who have the final say in this government is us. And we can't have that final say. We can't have that final say if we're disarmed. And we can't throw off evil government if we're disarmed. And now, federal government, do you know why we will not disarm? And you know why the sheriffs in this country should not allow any more gun control? Because we will not be disarmed. We are the ultimate authority in this country. If you read the Constitution, and especially the Declaration of Independence, you'll see who's in charge of this country. And it's not corrupt Washington, D.C. politicians. It's us. And our main servant, our chief protector, the sheriff, is our employee to make sure that happens. And he has the authority and jurisdiction and our personal authority because he is the only law enforcement officer who is elected by, for, and of the people. All the others are bureaucrats. But anybody, any chief of police, and any official who has taken the oath has the same responsibility. It's just that the sheriff is the one that reports directly to you. And he's the only one. And his history goes back 1,000 years. And now when the Brady Bill came out when I was sheriff, I recognized it immediately as what it was. An unconstitutional mandate, an unfunded mandate, crap from Bill Clinton and Sarah Brady, and forcing me to become a redcoat for the federal government. And this was the first time in history that legislation from Washington, D.C. forced your sheriff to work for them under threat of being arrested. Serious. There was no money attached, but there was a threat. And it said, whoever knowingly fails to comply with these provisions is subject to a $10,000 fine or a year in jail or both. Well, the first thing my lawyers did when we filed this on February 28, 1994 was get an injunction against the federal government from coming in my home at 1 o'clock in the morning, arresting me with my wife and children, yelling, "Where's Daddy going?" And so we got that injunction. And Janet Reno said, oh, well, that part of the Brady Bill didn't apply to the sheriff, just the gun shop owners. Does that make you gun shop owners feel better? Well, the judge in our case where we got the injunction, you know what he told Janet Reno? He says, she doesn't get to change the law just because she writes a memo. Ah, smart judge. John Roll at Tucson Federal District Court. And so, I'm going to go back to my old one where I have all this highlighted and my notes clear. So we filed this case, and then Sheriff Prince from Montana joined the lawsuit about 6 weeks later, and ultimately 7 of us filed this lawsuit. One from Texas, one from Vermont, one from Louisiana, one from Wyoming, and Mississippi. That was it. 7 out of 3,000 sheriffs across the country fought this all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And then Sheriff Prince and I ended up at the Supreme Court together in December of 1996. And on June 27th, 1997, the United States Supreme Court announced that the federal government exceeded their authority and that they cannot commandeer the office of the sheriff. And over in this decision, Mack versus U.S., Prince Mack versus U.S., it says, state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. What do you think of immediately when you hear that? Don't you wish your state legislature knew that? Well, it's right here in plain sight, and it's as plain as the nose on your face, and the Supreme Court shouldn't have to tell your state that. because we're not going along with this anymore. And we're going to know exactly why. And this is what Scalia actually quotes Madison in here. They become so intertwined, I don't know half the time if I'm quoting Madison or Scalia. But it's mostly Madison. And this is where it starts, and it gets really powerful. Quote, this is right out of the decision. And any of you can verify this. Just Google Mack versus U.S. and look at the Cornell University. You can see what each one said, each justice of the Supreme Court, what they said about this case. It was a 5-4 split. Scalia wrote the decision for the majority, and you can watch that when you look it up. But the main points are in this book. Okay? The great innovation of this design was that our citizens would have 2 political capacities. One state and one federal. Now get this. If you don't leave here with anything else, get this. And remember, it's right here on page 15 of the book. 2 political capacities, one state and one federal. Each protected from incursions by the other. So who protects you from incursions from the federal government? Your state officials. Is the county a political subdivision of the state? Yes, it is. And do any of your county officials have this obligation just as much as the rest of the state does? Even more so. Why? Because your state's not doing it. Are they? Your state's not doing it. The state wants federal money. And can I please ask you something? Where does the federal government get money to hold over your head so you'll do everything they tell you? From you! So how do we stop that? We stop sending them our money. You know? And the state should tell us. The state should tell you to stop sending your money to Washington, D.C. Wouldn't it be wonderful that your sheriff, county commission, and your state tell you to send all federal income tax to the state or to the county treasurer, and they'll hold it there for the feds when they deserve it. Folks, all this takes is a little courage now. We've got the truth. Now we need a little courage. Okay? A legal system unprecedented in form and design, establishing 2 forms of government, each with its own direct relationship to the citizens. Get this. Gosh, people think I make this stuff up. I don't make this up. It's right there. The local or municipal authorities, the county or city authorities, form distinct and independent portions of the supremacy. See, the federal government quotes the supremacy clause all the time, saying that they're supreme. What does the supremacy clause really say? It says the Constitution is supreme, and only those laws made pursuant to the Constitution are supreme. So is there anything left in Washington, D.C. that's supreme? No! They don't do anything according to the Constitution. And so it's easy to come up with this. Where are we supreme? In our local governments. It says it right here. Let me say it again. The local or municipal authorities form distinct and independent portions of the supremacy. No more subject within their respective spheres to the general authority than the general authority is subject to them within its own sphere. The question right there is, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends and fellow Americans, where do we define the sphere of the federal government? Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. It has 18 assignments there that are given or allowed to the federal government. Let's review that just briefly in one area. How many law enforcement authorities or assignments or tasks are granted from the Constitution to the federal government? There's about 4 of them. How many have they stolen since then? 5,000 or more. There's 4. Felonies committed on the high seas or piracies, treason. Don't you wish the FBI would investigate treason? Start in D.C. and work your way out. They'll never get out of there. You know? And counterfeiting. Okay? That's it. That's all that was given to the federal government in law enforcement. And there's another place later on in the Constitution that says that the federal government's in charge of protecting our country from invasion. So yes, they're supposed to protect our borders. Hey, bang up job they've done there, huh? Yeah. And now they've thrown that at the foot of the states, and the states are suffering because they have not done their jobs. When the federal government refuses to do its job, we must. Okay? That's all there is to it. We must. And this goes on. So, what provision in the Bill of Rights makes sure that the federal government knows and understands that if they ever want to go out, Article 1, outside Article 1, Section 8, if they ever want to expand the federal government, if they ever want to get creative with the federal authority, what provision of the 10 basic fundamental rights that cannot be encroached upon or changed or altered and must be obeyed as a supreme law on the federal government, which one of those 10 tells the federal government, just in case you think we forgot something, or you want to expand your authority and you want to get creative and you want to create a police state and welfare state and all this other crap you want to do to us, which one must they refer to? The 10th Amendment. And it says all assignments and all authorities not given to the federal government are reserved to the states or to the people respectively. And we are sovereign. And so, anything outside Article 1, Section 8 belongs to who? The states or to us. That's right. And we're just as powerful as the states. And it makes that very clear. Right there. Let's go on. This Scalia hasn't stopped, and neither has James Madison. This separation of the two spheres. Which two spheres are we talking about? Local sphere and the federal sphere. This separation of the two spheres is one of the Constitution's structural protections of liberty. Wow. The United States Supreme Court said that. It's in case law. It is the supreme law. Why? Not because the Supreme Court ruled so, because they're simply reinforcing the Constitution. And the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, or at least it used to be. What we're here to do tonight is to make sure it's put back as such. And so when you have sheriffs and local county and municipal authorities that know and understand their oath of office to protect these two spheres and thus your constitutional freedoms and liberties, you reconnect with freedom as your sheriff reconnects with his duty and obligation to protect your constitutional rights. He doesn't have to ask permission from anybody to do that. He already got your permission. And he promised you in God's name when he took his oath that he would keep that word and keep that promise. It's the only thing that really matters in government today. Because what is your sheriff for? To secure these rights. Yeah. And just in case he didn't get it, or we don't get it, that part I just said is a structural protection of liberty, is in bold on page 16. And then it says, hence, get this, hence a double security arises to the rights of the people. And that's what it was all for in the first place. It's to make sure in every regard that our rights are protected. Hence, a double security arises to the rights of the people. The different governments will control each other. So, then I ask a little question. I have a blank space right there. See, there's a blank space, right? I'm telling the truth, huh? Blank space. Okay? See? He's a witness. Okay? Your witness fees will be coming later. All right, thanks. There's right here. So you ask whoever you deliver this to, and you ask them to write the answer there. It says, so who, the question is asked, I ask it, I wrote it, I can ask it. So who is charged with safeguarding the people from the federal government when it refuses to control itself? And then it says in parentheses, please write the answer in the space provided. So there's a space provided. Okay? That's the only place in the book you have to do any homework. Okay? Now, what does a constitutional sheriff look like? Have there been some in this country? Well, sure, yeah, I think I kind of was. And I know some others who have been. I know some sheriffs who have taken some real stands against the federal government. Even a sheriff in Nye County, Nevada, who threatened to arrest federal agents who were trying to confiscate cattle from Wayne Hay. God rest his soul. But he fought the federal government over grazing rights for 10 years and finally won posthumously. It was such a long ordeal for him, I just don't think he could take it anymore. And he passed away. But this is the thing. The sheriff told the federal agents if they took one more cow, he would arrest them until it was all settled in court. And it turned out that they should have taken none when they actually had. And this happens in Arizona and a lot of different places where ranching is a prevalent industry. It's happened in Arizona and other places. But this is the key point. I want to put this into historical perspective for each one of you so that we can use a wonderful lady as an example as to what we do with stupid laws. And boy, we have a lot of them, don't we? And the enforcement of stupid laws, especially traffic laws, that I already mentioned some of them, the enforcement of stupid laws is the very essence of tyranny. And we don't want this anymore. And we want police officers and sheriffs and public servants who know and understand when a law is unconstitutional, and I'm not going to go along with it. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take people's property, you know, when it's improper. Okay. So let's put this into historical perspective. 1959. What was going on then? Rosa Parks. She got arrested in Montgomery, Alabama. Arrested, hauled off to jail. Had her fingerprints taken. She was causing trouble. And do you know why? Do some of you younger kids know Rosa Parks? Do you know Rosa Parks? Good. You probably are homeschooled. Are you homeschooled? Okay, good. Well, that makes me even happier, I guess, actually. Rosa Parks arrested because she wouldn't get to the back of the bus when a white man told her he wanted her seat. She went to jail for that. Do you know that the United States Supreme Court actually endorsed segregation at one time? And that's why the police were still arresting people in 1959 for it. But this is the way it should have gone down, with a constitutional sheriff taking that call from the bus driver that night. The bus driver stopped the bus, got on a payphone, and called the sheriff's office and said, "There's a troublemaker on my bus, and I want her arrested right now." They said, "What's the problem?" "She won't give up her seat to a white man." And so the sheriff is there when the call comes in, and he tells the deputy, "Come with me, we're going to take care of this." What does the deputy think? Man, Rosa Parks is in trouble now. She's going to get it. The sheriff's going. And so they get on the bus, and they walk up to Rosa Parks, and they said, "Ma'am, what seems to be the problem here?" She goes, "Sheriff, why can't we just be left alone?" And you know what? And he said, "You know what, Mrs. Parks? You're right." He says, "Can I sit down next to you?" And she kind of, "Well, yeah." He sits down next to her and he shakes her hand. And he says, "Miss Parks, when do you get off the bus?" And she said, "2 stops up on Elm Street." And he goes, "Do you mind if I get off with you?" And she goes, "I guess that's all right." So he gets off with her, and the deputy really doesn't know what's going on here. When's he going to lower the boom on this lady? And the sheriff says, "Miss Parks, it's kind of late. Do you need to get some sandwiches to take home for you and your husband?" And she goes, "Yeah, actually I do." And so he says, well, let's stop off over here at the All White restaurant and get some hamburgers. And so the sheriff takes her into there to the restaurant, and she wouldn't have got those hamburgers if he wasn't there, huh? And so they get some hamburgers, and everybody in the restaurant's watching the sheriff do that. And he's teaching the community a very important lesson. What you do with stupid laws. That's all the sheriffs need to teach the federal government now. We're not going along with your stupid laws anymore. And the sheriffs can teach that. Teach the IRS. We're not going along with stupid laws anymore. Yeah. This is an easy process. It might even be fun. You know, and so Rosa goes home with the sheriff, still escorting her. And the deputy and the sheriff are walking up to the home, and Mr. Parks sees Rosa coming with the deputy and the sheriff. He comes outside, what's going on? And the sheriff goes, well, we had a little trouble tonight. Your wife wouldn't give up her seat to a white man. And he goes, Rosa, what did I tell you about that? Quit causing trouble. And he goes, it's okay. She did the right thing. And now Mr. Parks is learning something. And the sheriff turns to Mr. Parks and says, sir, do you have a gun in the house? And he goes, well, yeah, I sure do. And he goes, is it loaded? He goes, yeah, I keep my shotgun loaded and close to the door. And he says, good. Make sure you do, because there might be trouble tonight. There might be people coming by here throwing rocks at your place, or even worse, after they hear what happened. But we're going to have extra drive-by patrol, and this deputy right here is going to be driving by your house every 15 minutes. And now the deputy learned something, didn't he? And my dear friends, the question remains, did that sheriff uphold the law? Boy, you better believe he did. But he put the statute where it belonged, in the trash can. You see, and that's the type of sheriff we're talking about. And a lot of people, you might be thinking this, Sheriff Mack, we don't get to pick and choose. The police officers don't get to pick and choose which laws they uphold and defend and enforce. Well, one, it's called police discretion, and they do it all the time. But you know what? You're right. They don't get to pick and choose. They already swore an oath to uphold and defend the United States Constitution and the Constitution of California. And both of those are like that when it comes to protecting your fundamental God-given rights. And they cannot violate that oath, even if the state legislature issues 50 laws telling them to do so. That's why we must shift the way we think. Our paradigm, the paradigm that exists here, is shifting tonight. We're not going to be worried about any more conspiracy theories. We're not going to be worried about chemtrails or even what happened at the attacks on September 11th. We're not going to worry about FEMA camps and the coffins or whatever else is going on in Washington, D.C. We're not even going to worry about that the budget has gone from Ronald Reagan 20 years ago, $450 billion, and by his own admission it was too much. He wanted to abolish the Department of Education, said that he should have. He promised us he would have, that he would, and he didn't. But that means his budget could have been cheaper. Just 20 years later, do we know what it is today? It raises just about daily, so it's hard to keep track. It's 3.7 trillion, an 800% increase. When are we going to say no? When are we going to put up the stoppers? When it's 8,000%? When these girls and this girl and some of these other kids, when they have absolutely no economic future left, when we've destroyed it all, is that when we'll put up the stoppers? True leadership recognizes the problem coming and takes action and gets ready. And we've got to get ready now. And we've got to have sheriffs ready for the gun control laws that are coming from Washington, D.C. And the sheriffs in this country should tell them right now, don't even think about passing any more gun control laws. Don't think about coming here and confiscating guns or ammo, because we will not allow it. Plain and simple. Does the sheriff get to pick and choose? Of course not. He's there to secure these rights. That's all. He doesn't get to pick and choose. His oath doesn't allow him to pick and choose. He must follow the Constitution. And if a statute forces him into the quandary of picking which one he will enforce, that's easy. You side with the Constitution and the people. That's easy. Let me tell you two things that are probably the two PowerPoints of my presentation. One, I find it so frustrating that it almost makes me cry when I see public officials and fellow peace officers in this country and sheriffs, some sheriffs, who take an oath in God's name to uphold and defend the United States Constitution. And then when some of you press them about that oath, or some of us press them about keeping it, they tell us that it's not their job to uphold and defend the United States Constitution. I can't handle that disconnect. I can't handle how huge that gap is, and we have got to stop that gap. And as we focus on the power that is within our own hands here tonight, to have the people that work for us here locally to stand and keep their oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, they work for you. They must hear from you. And the group that I spoke to in Montana, I went through Montana, 4 different speeches in 4 days, zigzagged the state of Montana. And you know what? The conservatives there, the Republicans, or whoever, it doesn't matter what party you are. This isn't about party. This is about our freedom. And they told the other Republican candidates and Republican officials that if you're not a constitutional conservative, we will never vote for you again. Don't ask. We won't. And it becomes vogue. It becomes in. It becomes what our government's supposed to be about. And the election and political process is supposed to be which candidate will uphold and defend your constitutional rights the most. And then you vote for that person. And if you have 2 that won't do it at all, you don't vote. You do not vote for them. Neither one. Okay? And you let them know that right up front. Because we're not putting up with it anymore. And our focus and our money and time are not going to be in Washington, D.C. anymore. But we're going to be watching the sheriffs in this state and all over the country. Again, like I said, go to sheriffmack.com and we're going to have some real neat things there for you real soon that are going to get this plan in action. We're raising money for it. We're going to do it. I'm going to be in charge of vetting the candidates and finding the candidates. If the current sheriff will stand for the Constitution and he'll become will be a constitutional sheriff, he can stay. If he won't, we're going to get a candidate who is that will run against him. Okay, that's all there is to it. So make sure you check out my website, because we're just now building another website for that group. And like I say, this just started a week ago when I was in Atlanta. So we're getting it ready, but we're going. And these are movers and shakers, and these are people who know how to raise money, and they know how to move, and they know politics. And you wouldn't believe the things that, I mean, these guys are fantastic. And they've asked me to be the face of the organization and to take this nationwide and to be the one that's doing the interviews. Okay? And we're going to do it. Okay? I'm not running for anything. So I'm not playing politics with any of this. And this is where my heart is, and it's a natural process for my heart. Okay? The other one, the other PowerPoint, I want to make sure you know and understand this. And again, 49 pages that will document this and provide you irrefutable evidence. The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. It's there. Okay? The President of the United States cannot tell your sheriff what to do. That's it. He has no authority. If that were the case, when I was on the Phil Donahue show in New York when we were filing this case on the Brady bill, I told him, I said, the federal government is not my boss. They cannot tell me what to do. They can't hire me and they can't fire me. I work for the people of Graham County, and your sheriff, your president cannot tell this sheriff what to do. And the guy goes, oh, they tell you what to do all the time. You have to do FBI statistics and send them into Washington, D.C. And I said, I don't have to do that if I don't want to. What are they going to do, come arrest me if I don't send them how many traffic accidents we had last month? I said, I do that to help with national statistics, that's it. But they don't threaten to throw me in jail or fine me if I don't. And there's not a thing they can do about it if I don't do it. And there's nothing they can do to your sheriff either. And wouldn't it be great if 10, 15 sheriffs from California write a letter to the federal government, to the White House, and to Congress and say, from now on, if any federal agent violates the Constitution in these counties, we will consider it a criminal offense. And we will take action. And make sure that the department heads get a copy, like especially the FBI and IRS and DEA and a few others. Make sure they get a copy of that, because you want them to know and understand that principle. So, now, one of the key parts of my decision that made everything that I put into this worthwhile. Do you know how much it costs, how long it takes to take a case from the very beginning all the way to the United States Supreme Court? It's a miracle just to be heard by the Supreme Court. But to actually win a case there, that's beyond miraculous. And I actually stood there in that building, and the Brady bill was named after James Brady. And he was in his wheelchair just about 5 people from me. And I went and shook his hand. I wanted him to know that this wasn't personal, and that I admired that he worked for Ronald Reagan. And he said, Sheriff, he says, I really admire you too. And it was a very powerful moment. But standing in that building was like standing on hallowed ground. And it was an amazing process for this little small town sheriff. It was absolutely amazing. It was awesome. And at one point, when I'm studying and reading the Supreme Court ruling handed down written by Scalia, towards the end of the ruling, I got chills. And he said, quote, but the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. Did you hear that? What does the Constitution protect us from? Even our best intentions, which would protect each of you from being forced by your government to participate in the welfare state. That is immoral. It's wrong. And the wholesale distribution of radar tickets and photo radar is wrong and immoral. And we shouldn't be doing it. Now, if any of you want that reference that I just said, it is on page 36, second paragraph. But the Constitution, and I'm going to finish it, there is more. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of government precisely so that we may resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day. Folks, this is in a Supreme Court decision. I just quoted the United States Supreme Court in Mack versus U.S. Do you see some truth here? Janet Reno was ordered by Bill Clinton to send a memo to every sheriff and chief of police after we won and told them that this case was meaningless and to keep doing what they were doing. Do you really think the Supreme Court handles meaningless cases? Only when it's on the wrong side of Bill Clinton. Heck, how many people fought Bill Clinton and lived to tell about it? Well, I'm still alive and kicking, and we're going to take this nationwide, folks. We're going to take this message to every sheriff in the country. We're trying to raise the money also to do just that. We've already got about 7 states now completely covered where the sheriffs have received this book. We got about 41 to go. There's no sheriffs in Connecticut. The state legislature did away with the sheriff's office. Yeah. And Hawaii and Alaska have never had a sheriff. We need to get them in those two states, especially Alaska. Okay? Well, because Alaska's doing a lot of things right. And folks, let me tell you, when you leave here, remember, if you've been concentrating on any of these conspiratorial theories or conspiracy theories, I'm not telling you there's not validity there. I'm telling you we can worry about those and we'll solve those after we get our Constitution back. But the rest of it's going to be academic and meaningless if we don't have a free country. And if we don't have the rule of law that's happening within our own government. And let me remind you what I said at the beginning. The greatest threat to God-given constitutional American liberty is our own federal government. And that's where we have to come in. And that's the warning we got from James Madison. And I'm reading a book about the biography of John Adams. And he said, there is no middle way. If we finally lose this great and glorious contest, it will be from bewildering ourselves, groping for the middle way. Ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution does not provide for a middle way. It provides for a complete and total balance of power between the people and the states and the federal government. And right now, that balance is so far out of whack that you can't even recognize the original constitutional intentions of the Founding Fathers. It doesn't exist. Now, my thing is this. It's peaceful, it's proper, and we actually have the sheriffs do it and stand for this principle of freedom, of protecting God-given individual rights. And I still have yet to have any sheriff or anybody tell me what that is going to hurt. Oh yeah, there was one in, I think he was Missoula, sheriff in Missoula said, well, some of these federal agents are my buddies and we go to coffee all the time. I'm not telling you not to go to coffee, you can even go golfing with them. But you let them know right up front that any more violations of the Constitution, and they're going to spend a free night in the Missoula Hotel with the sheriff's office name on it. And you let them know that if they're not a friend of freedom, then they're not a friend of your county or your people. And that's over. Now, remember when I told you that I went to that constitutional studies for law enforcement officers? I learned something there that just totally sank into my heart. And I'm a pretty patriotic guy, and I love America, and I love freedom, and I have for a long time. And sometimes my kids would go, Dad, gosh, you know, enough already. But my kids know the Constitution, and they know freedom, and they know my heart is in this totally. Well, the good Lord blessed me again. And 3 years ago, on the 4th of July, 3 years ago, my first grandbaby was born. Get that, the 4th of July. And that's one time you could have seen me crying. Because my daughter came to me and said, her name's going to be Liberty LaDawn. So, it's time to have the dawn of liberty, isn't it? And it can start right here. And it starts in our hearts. And there's nothing subversive. And there's nothing mean or cruel about any of this. It's an act of love. It's an act of patriotism. It's God, family, and country. And when you look at your kids and your family, and you tell them that you're not going to do this, or that you can't stand for this, I think that you'll see the answer in the eyes of your children and your other family members, that you can, and that we can do this, and that it's not going to hurt anybody. And this will be the fate of our country. Here, locally, where it could work. Remember the paradigm shift. Washington, D.C., forget it. Anybody asks you to spend time or money there, you're wasting your time or money. If any of you think that the answer is in Washington, D.C., then I've got beachfront property for you in Omaha. It's not. And so at that law enforcement training I went to, I spent 2 days there, remember? Well, this frail, kind of homely guy, the teacher, my mentor, Cleon Scalzo, stands about 5'9", 5'10", maybe at the most. He gets up on this pedestal in front of all of us. And with the power of God and the spirit of freedom, he had all 240 of us big tough cops get up and do a little kindergarten exercise with him. And I've taught it to my children, and I've taught it to my little Liberty, my little Libby Ladon. And she can do it. And I leave it with you tonight as America's political prayer. I leave it with you with all the devotion of my heart for you, for liberty, and for the founding fathers who gave us this opportunity to be here tonight, to stand and fight for our freedom, that we can actually do that together. And we must show support and be patient with those officials for a week or two until they get it. Okay? And the political prayer that I will leave you with you tonight goes like this. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And that's the eagle. And like Libby tells me, Grandpa, that's an eagle. I learned that at law enforcement training. Now take this and let freedom ring wherever you go. Put it in your hearts, put it on your sleeve. Be loving and patient as you share this message with others. And then move and expect them to move for this holy cause. The holy cause of liberty, as Patrick Henry called it in his famous "Give me liberty or give me death" speech. This is what made America great. We will not watch our country die one more day. We don't have much time left, my good friends. We've got to get moving. I'm willing to do this full-time, nationwide. I thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity of looking in your eyes and feeling the holy cause of liberty. Now we have one more exercise we need to do, and I thank you so much for the opportunity of being here tonight. May God bless America. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody out at my table, I need my briefcase. Anybody out at the table, I need my briefcase. Yeah, okay, I think she's got... I need my briefcase because we've got one other thing to do. I don't know if how many of you have heard of the Oath Keepers, but that is a group I'm married to now. I've been talking about and preaching about the oath of office for 20 years. And that's what really took me to the United States Supreme Court. Well, Oath Keepers couldn't be here tonight, and I'm all part of them. And so we're going to do our own oath ceremony. And let me tell you again, this is for real. Some of you have taken this oath before. Many of you who are veterans or have served in other branches of government have taken this oath. And now we're going to allow citizens and all of you alike to participate in the oath ceremony. And we just about got grabbed that briefcase from my lovely assistant. And we're going to do this right now. But again, remember, you do not have to take this, but if you do take it, this will be your word and your oath. And you're going to pledge your life and fortune and sacred honor just as the Founding Fathers did. And so you can sit back down for a minute while I read you the oath. And then, after I tell you what the oath is, then those of you who want to will stand and raise your right arm and take this same oath. Now you'll go, I, and then you'll say your full name. In my case it would be Richard Ivan Mack. Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations of purpose of evasion. And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office in whatever capacity that might be. So that includes citizens. And pledge my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor to this holy cause. So help me God. Now, those of you who are willing to put your life and your name and your reputation on the line for this oath, please stand and raise your right arm. Now, I will say the line and then you repeat it after me, but the first part, everybody just say your own name. So, I, Richard I. Mack, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations of purpose of evasion. And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office in whatever capacity that might be. And pledge my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor to this holy cause. So help me God. Shake the person's hand next to you. Now, if you'll let me get to the table, then I'll be happy to. I'll book sign as much as you can. Let's keep it as fast as we can to do that, okay? Because I'm heading out tonight to Oregon. Okay? Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. While you're moving out there, we just want to remind you a few other things. If you see people here wearing the Stop Tank shirt, these are people that have stood up against the bureaucracy and won. Congratulations, you people are heroes. You took on the bureaucracy that was trying to take your homes, and some of our city officials supported you, some didn't, and I hope you all remember who didn't support the people here in the future. Anyway, the books and the tapes by the sheriff are available, and he's going to be moving over. Do we have a... Okay, there's also Tea Party Patriot t-shirts and hats, pocket constitutions, anything you can imagine that has to do with the Patriot Tea Parties. Constitutional Corner CDs, as heard on KQMS. And they're going to be, the next Speak Out Forum will be August 1st at the McLaughlin Auditorium, Sequoia Middle School, from 5 to 7. On single payer universal health care. And we'd like to thank great man, and all the people that put this on tonight. Thank you very much.